My faith journey. Back in early February, after completing the Spiritual Gifts workshop, Beth asked me if I would give a testimonial entitled, My Faith Journey. This was only minutes after I had declared a willingness to lead a Church for Atheists circle. I said yes, because I'm unable to resist a challenge. I've had 3 months to prepare for what I now realise is the telling of my life story. Don't worry, I promise it'll be over in 9 minutes exactly. I want to start with family. I have faith in family. I'm talking about my family of origin back in Australia. I'm talking about my own family in this congregation sitting in the second row on the front. I'm going to name you from right to left. Gwen, my first wife and mother of our 4 children. Reese, my second son. Panda, who's not there because she didn't want to come. And I get that. Cordy, my second daughter. And Tristan, my eldest. There's Laura beside him. Laura is Tristan's girlfriend. I didn't know she was coming. And to Laura's right are her parents, Mary and Reg. You are my rock. You are my family. I'm talking about my staff at work. I'm talking about my patients. My Musical Friday friends. I see you there, Patsy. Any other of my Musical Friday friends who don't usually come to church? Rob, are you here? I'm talking about my cycling buddies. Any of my cycling buddies here? No? And finally, I'm talking about you, the congregation at Canadian Memorial. You are all my family. I love you, and I know you love me back. And I know I can rely on that. I have faith in that. I was raised in a good Anglican home by loving parents to believe in an all-powerful and forgiving God. I went to church and I learned the scriptures, and at the age of 13, I was confirmed. At 17, I was a born-again Christian, speaking in tongues. At 18, I went to university, discovered Charles Darwin and DNA, and gave up God. Instead, I worshipped at the altar of science. I became a doctor. I had a family. My first marriage failed. I got married again to Leslie. She's not here. I invited her. She couldn't make it. That failed too. And that was 3 years ago. The big change, and what ultimately brought me to Canadian Memorial, was my enrolling in a personal development program led by Dwayne and Catherine O'Kane, known as clearmind.com. This program taught me the biggest lesson of my life, that I have anxiety, and it's caused by a deep-seated childhood wound that I'm not good enough. That wound hurt me so much that I spent most of my adult life covering up the pain. Some people use drugs, some use alcohol, some gamble. I used overwork, overfunctioning. That's where you're trying to fix other people. That's where you're doing more than your share in a relationship. And most of all, I used conflict. This led to chaos in my life. I hurt myself and I hurt others. The ones I hurt most are sitting in the second row and at home. I'm pleased to announce that I've been on the road to recovery for about 2 years now. I'm now fixing myself rather than trying to fix others. I'm feeling my feelings. I'm trying to be honest, transparent and accountable, and to lead an authentic life. And during the same time, I found myself with 2 new passions, with piano and West Coast swing dancing. I rehearsed this speech this morning while Bruce Gore, my piano tuner, was tuning Gwen's piano. And he was really interested to hear it. He said, you know what, I'm going to have to hear that a few more times to really get what you're saying, Tom. Bruce is in my family too. Anyway, in a moment of inspiration, about a year into my recovery, I turned to one of my clear mind friends, Mike, and said, Mike, I've got a great idea. Why don't we set up an organisation where we can practice all these newfound skills? We can rent a hall and have meetings and workshops and socials and musical evenings and invite people who think and feel the same way as us. Wouldn't that be great? Then last November, Beth Hall, where's Beth? Hi, Beth. Beth's the reason I'm here. Beth Hall sent me a text one Sunday morning. I remember I was, lying in bed, checking my messages, about 9 o'clock. And the text says, Tom, why don't you come to my church for 10:30? I think you'll like it. I went and quickly realised that what I was talking about building with my friend Mike already existed here at the Canadian Memorial. So here I am today. So I've told you my story. Now I want to get on the pulpit. Now I actually want to get down deep. I'd like to finish up by telling you what I've learned about truth and conflict, and finally, tell you what I believe in. Let's start with truth. As a scientist and logical thinker, I always thought that I either knew the truth or that I could discover the truth. Only rarely was I prepared to admit that I just didn't know the truth. Part of my personal growth has been to recognise that my version of the truth was influenced by a bias well known to scientists called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is where you tend to find arguments that support your belief and tend to negate or avoid arguments that oppose it. I'm guilty of confirmation bias. The truth is that much of the time I don't know the truth, even about myself. I'm gradually becoming more comfortable with this idea, and I know it makes me an easier person to be with. And it brings me to the next big theme, the biggest theme of my life, which is conflict. Conflict, as I know it, comes from wanting to be right about something. It's one thing to know you're right, like Lonnie knows when he hits a C or a C minor. It's one thing to know you're right, but wanting to be right, if you want to be right, that means that the other person is wrong. And that leads to resentment and misery. I have more than 35 years of experience as a perpetrator of conflict, of wanting to be right. What I learned at Clearmind was the reason why I engaged in conflict. I found out it was to cover up the pain of my childhood wound that I wasn't good enough. By engaging in conflict over the years, I caused serious damage to many of my relationships, especially my intimate relationships. Gwen, Tristan, Panda, Cordy, Reese, Leslie and Livia, and all of you unnamed who I have hurt, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The personal truth and reconciliation circle that I'm offering to lead is all about helping others of you who might want to get up the gumption to be accountable, to fess up and to make amends. My motive is twofold. Partly it's a penance. I'm doing a penance. But secondly, I think I'll be really good at it because I've had so much practice. I'm going to finish up by talking about my faith and why I come to church. Faith to me is believing in something that cannot be proven. Faith is an intrinsically uncomfortable concept because, as I told you before, I worship at the altar of science. Scientists want proof, or at least overwhelming evidence, before they believe in anything. I don't believe in a traditional God or a higher power because I don't see compelling evidence. I see in science an abundance of good evidence for the existence of the observable physical universe. I can just hear my kids in the front second row, and I know my daughter Panda, who has the sharpest mind on the planet, thinking, Dad, then how can you put up with the mention of the word God and Christ and Jesus and all that stuff? How can you bear to go to church? Well, kids, firstly, God isn't mentioned much at all. By the way, today is very high church. Minister Beth doesn't usually wear robes. She's usually in civvies. There's no altar. There's no communion. There's none of this blessing stuff. This is very high church. I was anxious about it when I saw it all. So this is unusual. So secondly, well, since I've learned about conflict, I don't have to be right about my belief that there's no God. So there's no issue. I can sit happily beside people who believe in God, and it all feels okay. And thirdly, I now have my own definition of God. When I hear or read the word God, I translate it in this way: knowledge and love, a special kind of love that treats self and others as equal. I do have faith. I have faith in that love that treats self and others as equal. I have faith in family. I have faith in human kindness. I have faith that the universe is a friendly place. I have faith that being honest and accountable and connecting with others from a place of vulnerability will lead to good things. I have faith in this church community. I have faith that Minister Beth will give sermons that will challenge and ground me. By the way, Minister Beth is in fact the only higher power that I recognise. My motive for offering to lead a Church for Atheists circle is to offer to other people what I've discovered here. To promote the church as a community, as a place of joy, music, guidance, and comfort for those who might otherwise not come. Finally, why do I come to church? I come to church to learn to be a better person. I come to church because of Lonnie and the band and the choir. The music is so inspirational. It's what hooked me at the beginning, and then it was Beth's sermons. I come to sing. I come to see the kids skipping up the aisle on the way to the front to light the candles. I come for coffee and conversation. I come for what the future holds. And I come because it feels like I belong.